Hello everybody, we are back for season 2 of The Well. Thank you guys so much for being so patient. I know that a lot of you guys are wondering where we went. We were too. But we're back and we are so excited. We have so many things to talk about. But we wanted to start out this season on a little different note, bringing you guys a little bit onto this ride of a recap of just how God has been so faithful and moving in our ministry. In front of me right now is Pastor P. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We forgot to mention some of the details of our podcast.
What are our details of our podcast?
Wow, you totally skipped that.
Well, the details of the podcast is like, like how it's going to be focused on the different voices in our community.
It's on YouTube.
You lost your touch.
Oh, I thought that was going to be at the very end.
No, dude.
This happens all the time. I'm sorry, y'all.
Dude, I'm not going to cut this.
Oh, okay. So, if you are listening to this right now and you would love to give your suggestion to us, comment down below if you're listening to this on YouTube, or email us at rkkcpch@gmail.com. That's rkkcpch@gmail.com. Now back to the show.
He sounds like he's selling something, dude.
He's reading a spot.
Oh my goodness.
Dang. Dude.
Yeah.
I'm not cutting this.
Oh my goodness.
This is Coom.
All right.
Gord.
So, this is a recap of how ARCHE has changed. The first podcast that we sent out was back in March, and a lot of things have changed. I can't think of another word besides change. Transition. The dynamic is different. Our ministry is different, and I think it's really important for us to talk about it. And who else better than to talk about it than our pastor, who's kind of talking. Oh my goodness, who's been there for us. So a couple things. Pastor, if you would like to kind of talk about how much ARCHE has changed and what is your visions and dreams for that going forward?
So we began this podcast with kind of the foundations of, I think, what our ministry is and our intergenerationalness and a lot of that stuff and just kind of some of the dreams. So yeah, I think it's an interesting place to restart or just start again in season 2, just kind of talking about, I think, where God has brought us to this point. At that point in March, I think, or at the beginning of 2019, the last time I kind of took a count, one way that we know that we've changed is we had about 20 to 25 like non-students, so non-junior high, non-high school student members of ARCHE. So we were calling ourselves intergenerational in a lot of different ways, but that was kind of just a dynamic. So we had 150 to whatever students, and then 20 to 25. So it's obviously the numerical. The numerical majority was obviously the students. At this current point, as we head into 2020 with a couple weeks left here in 2019, we're about anywhere between 80 to 90 non-student members. And so, our oldest is, in the 50s, and we have a really growing number of young adults, young professionals and things of that nature, young couples, and then we have some families and things of that nature. Yeah. So just the dynamics of it all, regardless of anything, the size, the dynamics of the group has changed a ton. So obviously in terms of who's doing what we're focusing on, all that kind of stuff, that's changed a lot. And so when we began the year, one of the things that we had kind of set out on, some of the goals, even kind of in the middle of the summer when we were thinking about it, is that we wanted to become a church that was for the people, by the people, and through the people. That's something that we always said. One of our stated goals was to mobilize and empower our members to become a member-oriented church, people who have taken ownership and are doing things because they love the church, and also kind of one of the biggest, I think, changes or transitions that we've gone through as a youth pastor. I think for better or for worse, and not even because we meant it or we did it on purpose. A lot of the things were centered around the pastor. In this case, it was me. The gravitational pull, if you will, is centered around the pastor, and so you can feel that. I organize most of the stuff, and a lot of it's based on whatever my personal charisma, the relationships that I have, things like that. But as the dynamic started changing, particularly as we started to kind of embody kind of all these different groups, we began to realize that wasn't the best way to go about this group, and we really need to start to build the connections between the people, between the generations, and all those types of things. And so and then God very faithfully in a lot of different ways started to kind of add people and change the dynamics just naturally in terms of who was coming out. And so in so many ways, I am no longer even anywhere close, I think, to the center of the action, if you want to look at it that way. And then with Pastor Goose particularly taking, a major step forward and really taking a huge step to control and lead and really vision and help and guide all of our small groups and all of those types of things. It's again the focus and the attention. I think we're really kind of taking it away from quote unquote the primary leaders, which he and I, but also really to the people, and they're just really seeing what God is doing in and through the people. So I think one of the major things is kind of the center of gravity, if you will, of the group has dynamically changed. I won't even go as say like, it went from pastor to Jesus, because I think hopefully it was always centered around Jesus. But in terms of the people, the community, the
members,
just the people who were actually there, the body, it's kind of decentralizing from the leaders into its people, and so that's definitely one major dynamic that's changed for sure.
So, I mean, if you can go back down memory lane, the very first podcast that we had back in March was talking about your dreams and your hopes for this intergenerational ministry. How far do you think we've come along, and what are some of the hopes and dreams for this next chapter with intergenerational ministry?
I think we've definitely come a long way for sure. Like I said, just the dynamics of everything has changed. And so what it started doing was, if we're just being honest, and I was telling this to Pastor Goose the other day, actually, when we were just having a meeting, the two of us, and we didn't anticipate this change and the change in the dynamics this fast. And so we had dreams and we had hopes. We were going to do, membership classes and try to get as many members as possible. Mm-hmm. We had high school member stuff that we were going to do and classes, and just kind of we're dreaming for the future, the discipleship group stuff, on Sunday mornings for the students and just yags and all that kind of stuff. And then God just started bringing people. And the craziest part about it is a lot of the people that God started bringing, they stayed in large part because, and I've talked to a bunch of them, in large part because of the community and just the way that it's structured and just the vision of the future and how we wanted to create a home for all people. And so, some of the dreams that we had, I think God has really been faithful to those and really bringing fruit and answering a lot of our prayers. If you come on a Sunday, you can't help but notice that there are many, the numbers aren't as crazy in favor of just young people, in particular youth, as it is to, older people. Like if you just take a look, you'll see it. Now we have babies. We have 3 brand new babies. And so, and things like that. And so, things like that have changed. We can see in our energy, like even we have baptism coming up. So at our church, we always do baptism and confirmation on Christmas and Easter. And in the past, in our ministry, it's always just been youth
students,
right?
High school kids.
And mostly confirmation. And we had like one young adult, a little while ago. And this time around, if you look at we have 9 people from ARCHE, either being baptized or confirmed. And we have 2 babies, infant baptisms. We have 3 confirmation in terms of youth. We have 1 baptism that's a youth, and then we have 2 young adults that are being baptized. So you can see kind of just the dynamic of the whole thing, how it's grown and just kind of changed. And so it made me change the way that I teach the class, because it wasn't just focusing on confirmation mostly for the students. And so things like that have changed. And and going through membership seminars, and then I think right now, off the top of my head, I believe we've done 2 membership classes, and then we did a high school membership one. So I think in non high school members, I think we have somewhere in the ballpark of 40 something, low 40s, and then with about high school, I think we have about 18. So it's like about 60 total who've gone through the 3-week membership class and have signed and written out covenants and committed to serving and taking ownership of the group and doing those things. So like, again, you see that I can rely upon the folks and it's really the people that are doing those things. And so we've seen that change. And then I think the biggest change that we've seen as we've changed or grown, or I don't really like that word, but transitioned, and our dynamics have changed from largely youth or student-centered ministry into kind of this, dynamic intergenerational one, is that people are really, especially the older folks, are starting to really take ownership of their faith. And so one of the things that we set out to do, that I wanted to do, was I wanted to start to take our group into a much more kind of deep discipling kind of a culture. And so we began 102, ARCHE 102, which is Discipleship from the Mount, just a discipleship class.
Shameless plug.
Going through Sermon on the Mount. It's not really the same. You can't join anymore. It's too late.
Oh.
You have to wait for the next time around. But
next year.
Yeah. So we designed that course in such a way, and when I was thinking and praying through that course, going, okay, God, we need to really focus on what it means to be a disciple, particularly what it means to be a disciple in this age and this culture, depending on who you are. And so as I was kind of planning the class, I kind of thought through, how can we do this class? And the first thought that came to mind was, we can do it kind of the way that I know that lots of other people do, and things like that, which is to kind of do like an 8-week course. It's largely focused on education. And when I did that, I realized we were missing some components. We were missing, I think, what Jesus would have done with the discipleship, which is a lot of life on life. And then in the education, the thing that I was lamenting was the fact that I would never be able to actually example what it means to be in a discipling relationship, number one. And then secondly, I wouldn't get a chance to know any of the people that were just there to learn. If I had a relationship with you previously, because you were one of my youth students previously, like our producer here, Chris, like I've known him for a long time. So I have a relationship there. But if you were someone new to the church and just checking out the class or whatever, just came in, there's no way I would get a chance to know you. And I would feed you quote unquote information. And it may be good information for all we know, but, really wasn't doing discipleship the way that I understood Jesus was doing it. And so when I designed the course, I said, okay, we'll do, and then the dynamics of where we are here in Houston. One of the things about Houston is that people live all over the place, and we live in the third or fourth largest landmass city and things like that. And so our church, though it's a good location, I think, for who we are and who we serve, there are a lot of people coming in from Med Center and elsewhere, and it's a really long drive. And so to expect people to come 8 straight weeks on a on like weekend, a Tuesday or a Wednesday, especially when they have YAG every week, it's just a really tough load. And so that's the dynamics of our city and our group. And so I figured, okay, let's do monthly classes instead. But then more so than the logistics of it, I was like, we have to do one-on-one discipleship. And so I challenged everyone in the course to go ahead and sign up for that stuff and to do it, quarterly or every trimester or whatever. And because we got so many people to sign up for the class kind of unknowingly, I was hoping we could get like 8 or 9. And then we got like 20, 22, 23, 24, or whatever. And so, it's been a blessing, but, so things like that. But again, it's the people driven. People want to learn and people want to dig deeper. And again, the dynamics here that have changed partly as we transition from this is that, when you're a youth student, a lot of times it's kind of, you need to kind of get people to come out and kind of have to sell it kind of. But I think both of you who've been a part of both membership and 102, I really haven't done much of it all. I just make an announcement saying, hey, we have membership. Hey, we have, 102. If you want to come out. And then a lot of it has really been because I haven't sold it. We haven't done any promo or anything like that. But the reason why so many people checked it out is because, we had a group of like 10 to 12 that came the first week. And then all of a sudden afterwards, I think people were interested, like, hey, what was 102 about? How did it go? Yada, yada, yada. And they all started talking and the word spread and we got good reviews, thankfully, and then people just started coming, and then it kind of went to the point where I had to tell them this. You were there last time. I was like, "Hey, y'all can't join. No one can join after this class because we've already had 4 or 5, and it's
too many.
You've missed too many."
Yep.
But again, that was kind of the thing, and so it's being driven by the people talking and by the people sharing, and the YAG culture, things like that. So.
Yeah, I think it's important. We have this culture of membership and discipleship and like this culture of ownership when it comes to the people of ARCHE, which I think is awesome. And with a lot of the discipleship classes in 102, it's like, I don't know, this might not be the best phrase for it, but we're kicking it into the next gear of like living our lives completely for Jesus. And it's like you mentioned a lot during those classes, like we can't fake it anymore. There's no room for us to be faking this. There's no room for us to be not being genuine with this. And I really see it the way that we're moving it. And I think that goes to show like why things are appearing for certain people that we're moving fast because we're not faking it anymore.
And the crazy thing about it is you're just kind of looking at the landscape. I actually went to Korea not too long ago on a vacation. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a pastor out in Korea, and he's doing kind of, an English church in Korea. He's a second-gen English-speaking person like me. But I was talking to him, and then all of a sudden he kind of was asking me, he's like, hey, do y'all do any bilingual stuff at your church? Because we're Korean American, we have Korean speaking, English speaking. And I was like, I mean, yeah, but it's not very good. Like, we have a lot of work to do. And he was pointing me to a church that was very purposely doing bilingual services in Korea. It's an English church, but then they have bilingual and they translate in Korean, all that kind of stuff. And, I was just kind of interested. And he was like, yeah. And then he was telling me that his church, which has been growing very, very, steadily, and God has been doing really amazing things. And interestingly, his church is largely non-Korean. So it's a lot of foreigners in Korea, and they've kind of flocked to his church, and that's kind of the people that he has, which is really exciting. But he told his leadership and his elders and everyone at the church that they were going to go bilingual, and it shocked everybody. And a lot of them, responded like, hey, why are we doing this? Yada, yada, yada. And his response was very simple. And this is a stat, it's his stat. So I don't know if it's, statistically true, but I'm just going off of what he told me. He said less than 2% of the people from ages 18 to 30 or 35 go to church in Korea. And if you know anything about Korea, like they have the largest mega churches in the world. So there's a generation that literally doesn't know Christ. And in some ways, may sounds morbid, but literally Christianity is dying because, everyone there is old.
Yeah.
And as they literally die, then, there's no one replacing them. And so, and in the States, it's not actually any better, particularly in the immigrant population on some ways. One of the things that we have transitioned to is I was actually talking to someone earlier today, how, we had a thing called silent exodus, within the Korean American churches for a while. It was this term basically where, you're basically the two of you, college age kids and young adults folks, they would just disappear. After they graduated from high school. And then someone else coined this phrase that in the immigrant church, people saw clearly that when they graduated from the youth ministry, they graduated from the church. And so regardless of whether you dropped your faith or lost your faith, which happened to a lot of people, but even if you were doing well, a lot of folks weren't coming back to their home. And so if you look at one of the major things that has changed about ARCHE is that kind of the driving force behind a lot of this is the young adult kind of late, early 20s to mid 20s kind of age group. And they're the driving factor in all this. And that's actually a very interesting and welcome change. And so if you look at our members out of the, 40 some non-high school student members, I think probably like low 30s, 33, 34, 35 are all young adults aged from 19 to like 27, right? So that's kind of the core group of who we are. And so again, those things are changing. And these are people who are making decisions about their life, making decisions about their careers, making decisions about where they want to live and all these things. And they've all kind of gathered in this place at our church, encompassing the greater vision of becoming a unified Korean American church. And they've really bought into this thing. And so I think that's one of the major things that we've seen change that has been really interesting to see is that people have saying, I have to do this. This is my church. I want this to grow. I want this to change. I want this to do whatever. And they've really taken ownership of that. And I think that's been one of the most interesting things to see.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of been a tremendous thing. And I think the impact that it's going to have is that a lot of our high school and college students are going to be impacted greatly by that. Because when they come back to church now and they see who our members are and they see who our leaders are and they see all the people who are serving in different capacities, what they see are people that they will be in a few years. In a very short time. They don't see people who are 20, 30 years away. So I think that's kind of, an interesting dynamic. And I think that's been really cool things to see. So that's kind of where it would make sense for us to continue with this podcast as a way to communicate to you, the people of ARCHE, with season 2, that with all this transitioning and change, we want it to be focused on the different voices within our community, the culture of membership, the culture of discipleship, the ownership that we have in this ministry. We want to hear from you guys on what it means to be a Christian in so many different settings. We mentioned the young adults, we mentioned the parents, we mentioned the high school kids and beyond. We're a very diverse group, very eclectic in a lot of ways. And so the things that we can promise you, as producers and as hosts, is we want it to be from you guys. And Pastor Pete, could you tell us a little bit about why this is so important, why we want season 2 to be focused on the people, our members? Yeah. In large ways, I think in the immigrant church circle, particularly as Koreans, we focus a lot on education, knowledge, and instruction, right? That's kind of what we base everything on. Good instruction, good education, and good knowledge equals whatever it is that we hope that it equals. And one of the things that we've been stressing for a long time, Chris will remember this, we used to be called Poema, which is what our youth group used to be called. And that's from Ephesians 2:8, where it says we are God's masterpiece, right? And so workmanship is another way that you translate that Greek word. And Poema is also where we get the word poem, poetry. And so we coined that term simply because we wanted people to understand that we're a story that's being written. And so as our group is changing and as the dynamics are largely shifting in terms of so many different groups, we want to be able to focus less on instruction and really be able to help our people to know who it is that they are and who it is that they might become and who it is that they're serving and all these different things. And so we find that to be very important. So we wanted storytelling to be a really important thing that we're going to get to this year, because more than instruction, you can get instruction. And let's just be honest. I mean, maybe it's cool if you hear from me about certain topics or whatever. Maybe it kind of hits home because it's like close to home. It's like someone you know and you can believe. But there are many people in the world who do instruction a lot better than I do, and they're all over the web. And so we don't have to always have great instruction. There's very many places I can point you to, you know, where you're going to get great instruction. But one thing that you will not get anywhere else is the authentic stories and what the experiences and the lives that people are living that you can see and talk to and feel and touch and interact with on a Sunday to Sunday, or even, you know, on a day-to-day basis here at ARCHE. And that's what we want to be able to focus on. So things like, what is it like to be a high school student in a TikTok, like Vine, you know, Vine's not even a medium anymore, but, you know, whatever social media, whatever social media things are happening. I know we have a couple of our students who are actually semi-viral on TikTok,
TikTok
right now.
famous.
80K?
Right.
80K?
Yeah.
No, I heard one person had a couple million.
Yeah.
Really?
And that's like the thing.
Right.
No way.
So, you know, but so what is it like to be a high school person in this kind of generation?
Yeah.
What is it like to be a college student, you know, kind of in this dynamic, you know, with parents and, you know, all these other stuff, like, and then what is it like to be a young adult? Like, we're understanding there's so many books out there about Gen Z and, you know, or it's called iGen, depending on who you talk to. Like, what does it mean? And what is it like being a, you know, mid-20s, you know, working, you know, professional in the world? What does it mean to be a Christian in today's day and age with all the media and all these things? So we want to be able to hear these stories. We want to be able to tell the stories of these mothers who are having kids and having to balance these things. We want to, like, one podcast that I'm looking forward to tremendously is getting some of our professional doctors, and we have a bunch, actually, interestingly, and asking them, like, in a competitive field like medicine, you guys are at, you know, like, you guys aren't ho-hum nobodies. You guys are doing well for yourself. How do you balance? Because the statistics of people in medicine and quote unquote, you know, stability and relationships and marriage and family is not good, right? And so how do they balance that? And, you know, I have tremendous respect for them in terms of the way that they raise their families and do medicine, all that kind of stuff. So we want to hear from that. We want to hear, what is it like to start a brand new career?
Yeah.
We would love to hear from some of our couples. What is it like being married? Right? Just these stories that I think we all want to know that we don't have access to, right? And so what is it, you know, if you're a high school student listening to this and all of a sudden you hear about someone's first semester college experience, just the storytelling, not even questions, right? About how they found a church, about how they picked what class, about how they went through whatever it is that they went through, the ups and downs of, you know, the joys and the terrors of, you know, being a college freshman, all that kind of stuff. That's just fascinating stories that we want to hear from our folks. And so we hope that season 2 will be a lot less of me on a lot of levels, and just a really collective mix of the many stories that are out there that need to be told. And so hopefully people in listening to this will get excited and say, hey, I need to get on the podcast. And if you would like to be on this podcast and you want to share your story, because again, if it's your story, it's neither right nor wrong. It's just whether it's authentic and true to you. And so, you know, you really no experts are needed for this. It's just people who are authentically willing. And so if you wanted to, you know, if you're listening to this and you wanted to get on this a little bit, then yeah, contact Chris, or, you know, send us an email, or get with John, or, you know, come talk to me, and we'll try to get you on there, because that's, I think, where we want to be. We will have a couple. I know there's some topics that Chris has picked out, and, you know, we've been hoping to do that we've been waiting for. And so we'll definitely get to those, hopefully early in the new year. But we want to hear the stories. And so, like, even as we have winter break and Christmas coming up, we want to hear from some of our college students. Yeah. Right. And then, you know, and then just other things that I get excited about, things like can we have some vulnerability? Like if a family is having like health issues, like how do you deal with that? Or like we have so many young families, right? If you are like going through trying to have a child and all that kind of stuff, and the experiences, whether it's going well or not, yada yada, like what is that like? You know, just all these interesting things that we would love to hear that we don't ever get to hear. You know, it's all, again, it's all instruction and education based. And we want it to be communal and storytelling based.
Yeah, and that has a tendency, you know, with all the instruction, which isn't a bad thing. It tends to, at some points, become detached, and that's not something that we want to be as a ministry. We want it to be all about our congregation, all about the people there. Whether you've been here for a while since the beginning, or if you're a newcomer, if you're young or you're old, like that's what we want to focus on. The focus is on our stories, on relationships, on life, very much how Jesus, with his relationship with his disciples, was very much life on life.
Yeah. And I think I'm hoping one aspect that we will bring to this podcast, I don't know if it'll happen or not, because Koreans are Koreans to the core. But can we even get people to come talk about things that aren't going so hot with our group? Like one thing that I'm thinking about, like for instance, just take this topic because I think it hits home with the three of us in many ways. Is like, our praise team in particular is kind of one of the more eclectic or intergenerational ministries that we have within the church. It represents every group that we have.
Pretty much.
What is it like if you're a junior high kid on praise team? How does it function? What are some of the good and the bad? Like, the things like that, people that, just conversations that we could have about and the ways that we grow. And so we hope that this space can be a place where it'll encourage people to get involved because they see the realness and the authenticity of what we're doing. It'll encourage people to make connections, to talk to the people that are on this podcast. Because when you hear a story and you hear, oh, so-and-so has this story, then hopefully it'll encourage somebody. An example, I think, it was a sermon that was shared the other day when I was talking about our family and how my wife was buying Kara a new, gymnastics leotard or whatever. And, kind of how she chose one that kind of on the bottom, it looks like a swimsuit bottom. And then on top it had long sleeves. And I immediately said, why? And so long story short, and I said a lot of stuff on the pulpit, but the end part of that story that's really interesting is one of our junior high girls immediately walked up to my wife after that sermon and said, hey, I struggle with the same thing. I'm a gymnast. And I always wonder, do I need to buy this or buy that and all that kind of stuff. And it was a fascinating kind of interaction. And now they know each other. And, outside of that, they wouldn't have had that ability. So if we are able to tell these stories and put names to faces and experiences, right, rather than being it so monolithic or monotone in terms of my voice all the time, I think that's going to be a much more productive thing. And hopefully, our producer, we have the best producer on the block. Our block's only this long. That's why he's the best producer. He's the only producer.
You're not bearing false witness.
I'm not bearing false witness. He's the best producer on this one block. He's the only producer, so therefore he's the best one. You're the best producer here. But I know Chris has the abilities that we might be able to Skype some people in, and I think so. We have some new ideas. I think so. As a listener, if you're a listener and if you're part of our congregation and you want to help us out, don't think in the mindset that we've always had. Don't think topics like, ooh, I want to know what Pastor Pete has to say on this topic. More so, think about what is it that's just going to be helpful to me. I think one of the things that we're hoping for, and Chris was alluding to it earlier, is people have friends that are non-Christians, atheists or whatever. It'd be great just to have a unfiltered kind of live, conversation between the two, right? And see how Christian or whatever, stuff like that, things that are I think very important to us, things that we actually deal with on the daily, and so that can be very informative, but more so just kind of enriching to the person, right? And encouraging to them. So
we hope that you guys would be a part of this. We're at this point where we would love nothing more than to hear your stories and your experiences. So let us know. We love that kind of thing. So again, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, feel free to email us at rkkcpch@gmail.com. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube, please comment below on things that you would love to hear from us and from all these things. We hope that you would be part of this. Yeah.
Before we finish, reminds me, I hope I'm not putting him on blast, but we have a new guy. His name is Edmund.
Hey.
Hello, Edmund.
And the reason why I'm mentioning him is because I would love him to be on this podcast for many reasons, but primarily because his story is very unique.
Oh, yeah.
I just found out I was playing ball with him, and he looks like a fairly, typical, nondescript, whatever, Asian American, college student, 19-year-old. But he's from LA, I believe, Southern California, and he's taking all online classes at Arizona State University, and he got a full ride to do so. So he's not taking any physical college classes, because he wanted to go into business, and he's running his own business off the jump right out of high school. And then he's working to make a little bit of supplemental income on the side. And he's the youngest of 3 or something like that. And the only reason why his parents kind of let him do it is because, apparently Edmund's going to kind of do his thing anyway. But also his older brother didn't go to college and went to a technical school and is doing really well with some tech company that I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. Sorry, Edmund. I was listening, I promise.
Making games.
But so he kind of went that route. But then I was like, then what? Why Houston? He was like, I just wanted something different. So here you have this person this college student who's completely taking the path less not traveled, basically. And we would love to hear kind of his story on why, right? And just kind of his experience. That's helpful to us, and it's helpful to get to know him, but also opens up other doors and different things. And so that's the kind of stuff. I think a lot of Christian stuff tends to focus on the same things over and over. And if you want apologetics, go listen to Ravi Zacharias or something, and I think you'll get great apologetics that way. If you want, some of these other things, I think you can go there. But these stories that we have, you can't find them anywhere else, literally, because they're our folks. And so we hope that's kind of what this podcast will embody a bit more. This season 2, we'll see how long the season lasts.
Season 2.
And then hopefully we won't take as long of a break as we did between 1 and 2. But hey, so I think that's kind of.
I don't want this mic.
It's the motivational little things that we're
excited.
This is not motivating.
We're
this
excited.
is shutting me down.
We are very excited. We got a lot to glean from. So
yeah. So I think that's kind of what we're hoping for. And again, so if that happens, then I think this will be a much more dynamic space. I think it'll actually reflect our community a lot better than it did last time. And then we led the podcast this way, but I think it's fitting. We want the gravitational center or pool to not be me and what I provide the group, which is, quote unquote teaching and instruction. But we want it to be, indeed, even this podcast to be cliche. We want this podcast to be for the people, by the people, and through the people. And it'll never get that way until we do actually some real storytelling. So the challenge for all of us, and particularly for you, John, as the host, and then also for Chris here as a producer, is to kind of know the stories that are out there and then go seek them and go find them and see if people are willing to share the stories. And I think that'll be a lot of fun. So there's a lot of different things I think that can be spoken about. So hopefully we'll be able to do that.
All right, we made some big promises. So here we go.
We looking at you, producer.
Yay.
Best producer on the block.
Season 2. It's got to be better than season 1.
So
I didn't sign up for that.
Yeah.
well, I mean, you did.
I kind of did.
Yeah. But so I think we're excited. I'm thankful for this space. I'm just thrilled that we even have a pod. The fact that we can even say season 2 means we did enough in season 1.
The people, yeah.
Right, to have a season 2, right? So, I'm really thankful for that. So, shout out to Chris, again, our producer, our faithful and awesome producer,
Hey.
and then also kind of a plug. But I know that people have wanted to help out with this podcast and this kind of medium.
Yeah.
So if you're willing, then
know you.
again, then.
Come and find us.
Yeah. So
Yeah. We're not that hard to find.
let us know, and then we'll be able to do that. So hopefully, we'll make this something kind of more. And then the other thing is, if we have other voices, we'll be able to produce a lot more content.
Yeah, we don't have to wait on.
Variety.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't have to wait on John to be in town.
I'm a very busy man.
So we can have, multiple hosts, and we can do a lot of different
I'm
things.
super excited for that.
Right.
For those of you
Yeah,
guys that are interested in doing that, please.
Yeah. So again, podcast for the people, by the people, and through the people. As all
right.
things are with ARCHE, we want to be. So, yep.
Alrighty, guys. We hope to see you guys and hear from you soon.
Yes.
Love you guys.
Signing off from the podcast room, aka my kitchen table.
This is my house.
This is Pastor Pete, our producer Crispy, and then our faithful host John Garbaggio.
Dude, that. Oh my.
Hey,
that was not meant for public.
It's a story for a different time.
If you want to know what all these are, then again,
I
let
was
us know.
bullied by my pastor.
We will share the story on one condition: if you come and join and be a part of the podcast.
that's it.
Actually,
Good one,
I'm
good
okay.
one.
I'm okay
Yeah,
with
yeah.
you guys knowing
Get a high
this.
five.
Yeah.
So,
Let's get it. Yeah, let's get started.
Yeah.
all right.
All right. Bye.
Love
I'm
you
just
guys.
glad that you didn't say Kobe P.
Oh my god.
But you said Kobe.
Yeah, no. But the thing is,
And
I'm
you
gonna
can't,
cut this out.
No,
Bro,
you can't edit
no,
that
no,
out.
I'm gonna
There's
cut this
so
out.
many things about your.
No,
No.
If you cut this out, then on the next one I'm gonna explain
You
what Kobe
restart. We're
P
gonna
is
be- yeah,
in
yeah.
public in the middle, so you can't cut it out.
no.
So you said it. So anyways, if you want to know what Kobe P is, fill up the comments or whatever.
Smash that.
Smash the like. I don't know.
Smash
Whatever.
that like button.
Hit subscribe. Hit the
Subscribe.
bell.
All right.
Alrighty, guys.
Guitar Center, sponsor us.
Oh my gosh.
Please.
All right.
Bye.
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 Bonus clip. So for those of you that are still listening, yeah, for those of you that we got to start over.
No, we don't. We're gonna keep going.
We're gonna keep going. Okay.
Heck
For those of you that are still listening, you might be wondering why. there's a couple more minutes left on this podcast is because we're going to talk about New Year resolutions, because Pastor Pete has an interesting perspective on resolutions.
Apparently, I have
yeah.
an interesting perspective.
It is because not a lot of people agree
Yeah,
with
in
it.
light of this being the end of a decade.
Okay, I think a lot of people agree with it after hearing you.
Because it makes sense.
They just don't know it beforehand.
Yeah, it's like
Well, we'll see.
It just makes sense.
We'll see if they agree. We'll
Alrighty,
see if I can
sir.
articulate it
All right, bro.
properly. It's
Take
late.
it away.
let it rip.
So the host and the producers are doing a terrible job of setting me up on this one. You're supposed to actually ask the question, but the point is,
What?
My-
we
my-
asked the question.
no, not really.
No way.
My take on New Year's resolutions is that in many ways they're worthless. Actually, in 2009, long time ago, 10 years ago, actually. More than 10 years ago, it would be.
Comes around full
Yeah.
circle. It's 11 years
11
now.
years now.
Wow.
I gave a sermon on the first Sunday of New Year's, basically titled "Why New Year's Resolutions Are Worthless." I don't remember exactly what I said. That was a long time ago. I hope I have better thoughts on that now than I did 11 years ago. But I think you have to go back to like why people make them in the first place and why they make them at that one time. So we have this very interesting idea that when the calendar flips over to January 1st, all of a sudden things are very new. I don't understand that idea. Why are they so new? Just because you change the year at the end? It's kind of like, it's the cliche when someone turns a new age, you go, how do you feel? And really the honest answer is like, no different than I did literally 30 minutes ago when I was, 1 year less than I am now. So, like you feel more different in other monumental stages. Like if you get married, you're definitely going to feel a little different. Like life is going to change. If you get a job, offer or whatever, you're going to change and, like whatever. Like different things like that mean a lot more than kind of an arbitrary date that tells you that you're supposed to be quote unquote better. So one of the reasons why I don't like them or I think there's worthless is because most people push off the things that they should change until this arbitrary date of January 1st. A resolution only happens because you feel like you're supposed to change something, which means that something isn't good. And, something should improve or whatever. A resolution is something that you would like to improve about yourself. And so a lot of times people will kind of push it off. But let's say you happen to realize this thing that you need to change on December the 31st and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to change this, so let's change it tomorrow, and then you decide. So I think it delays some of the changes that we need to make because we wait for this kind of New Year's resolution type of thing. There's kind of this cultural kind of momentum thing I think that happens. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's not good. Another reason why I like it or I don't like it is because I think we assume that New Year's resolutions are going to drastically change our life. And I think we've talked about this a lot, but even in the Christian church, we're told to do a lot. We're told to change a lot. So New Year's resolutions kind of go, the spectrum of New Year's resolutions, span from things that are, pretty, I think, rudimentary, banal in the sense that like, oh, you know what, I'm going to drink more water as opposed to like soda, maybe is one of your New Year's resolutions. Or I'm going to, the classic one, I'm going to exercise and lose whatever amount of weight. And then if you kind of take it to like the Christian spectrum or whatever, or kind of in the educational field, people are like, I'm going to study more or, whatever. But in the Christian, I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to pray every single day. I'm going to do my QT every single day. And if you're in the Korean American church, I'm going to go to morning prayer every single day and all that kind of stuff. The reason why I don't really like it is because I think it reinforces this idea, particularly in the Christian church, that all these things that we do will equal and guarantee in some ways a growth that just isn't promised in and of the act itself. Right? And the reason why we know that is if you look at Pharisees and other people in Scripture, they did those things to the T. Law keeping was their jam, and they did it really well. And it didn't actually result in the kind of life change that I think we assume. And then I think the reason why also I don't like New Year's resolutions because the timing of it is also really terrible. It's not on God's time, it's on our time.
Ooh.
And so there's no listening to the Spirit in terms of what God wants you to change. And then also another thing, and there's so many different things about it, but just like rapid fire off the top of my head. Another reason why I don't like it is because generally it always is centered around what you don't like about yourself. Or a comment that someone made about you that you don't like about yourself, therefore you're going to change. But the way that God wants us to change and grow, or whatever the terminology is not really based on that most of the time. there's so many more things that happen in our lives, I think, that God is wanting to work on. And so a lot of times New Year's resolutions, it takes that power, it takes that authority, it takes that leading and guidance away from God and into our own hands. And I'm not a big fan of that either. So I think in a lot of different ways, I think there's a lot of things that are going on that I think contribute to this. And so those are a couple of the other things that I don't like. The other thing that I don't like is that most people who make them, I think we agree, they just fail, which means you feel terrible about yourself. Right? So, and then people do I don't know if you've ever done this. I think we did this one time I feel like I'm shoving this church on the bus, but a while back, I think it was in high school, we wrote letters. Like New Year resolution letters. Yeah.
No way.
We wrote
to your
letters.
Future self, basically.
Yeah, to your future self.
Oh my
Put it in
goodness.
an envelope, addressed it, and then stamped it. And then either the pastor or somebody kept it, and they were supposed to mail it out on June 1st or something like that. And they actually did. And so then by that time, the thing that happens is you've forgotten all about it. And then you get this letter, and it was horrendous. I don't even know what I remember. I just remember feeling really terrible, being like, oh my goodness, I did 0 of these things.
That's kind of dumb, though.
Well, exactly, but that's what New Year's resolutions
that's what New Year's
are.
is, yeah.
And then again, in the Christian church, again, in some ways, like saying you're going to exercise more, I think that's a better New Year resolution than a lot of the resolutions we make in the church.
The religious ones. Yeah.
Right. So like in the church, we'll say, oh, you know what? I'm going to be nicer to my parents. Don't last very long. I'm going to be nicer to my siblings or whatever. I'm going, I'm going to be more generous. Right. So it's like, it's all the things that you ought do, that you do not do
That
well,
do not do, yeah.
that you just proclaim without any real anything other than a disappointment or a sense of like failure or shame that you just proclaim, and then you expect them to like abracadabra happen, and they just never do that way. And so it just in the primary reason I think that centers around everything, New Year's resolutions are based on me as the planner, the executioner, and the whatever the make it happen, or I know that's not a word, but you know what I mean? Like it's all based on me. And that's just not the way the world works. That's the way. And then the other thing that I mentioned this, is that it's in many ways antithetical to the gospel, in my opinion, because the gospel tells us that while yet we are sinners, God makes us righteous. But New Year's resolution tells us because we are doing and dedicating and doing all these things, therefore we are good. Now, someone out there will undoubtedly say, well, are you saying that we shouldn't work hard and do that? No. I'm not saying that by any means. But this is like one way that I classically know is it's the reason of why. So if your resolution is to read your Bible more, which is, again, a really good thing. We all should read our Bible more, or pray more, or be nicer to our parents, or love people better, yada, yada, all that stuff. Why, right? Why? What are you trying to gain? And so if you read the Bible more, a lot of times what these resolutions are based on is you don't like the fact that you don't read it enough, and you ought to read enough. So it's kind of this guilt, duty-based kind of idea. But we all know, as good Christians, we read the Bible not because we need to or have to. We read the Bible because when you do, God reveals himself to you. It's knowing God that's the end goal. Why do we love others? Because it's good for our hearts. It's the way that God has created us. It does good to our own souls, not because it makes us terrible people when we are not.
Yeah.
Right? So it gets away. It actually skews the gospel a ton, and we don't realize that it does.
Yeah.
So, am I against the resolutions? No, I'm not necessarily in and of themselves, but the way that we make them aren't very healthy. And so in the Christian church, I think that's kind of one of the things that I think we're talking about. I think that isn't the best. And so it just dawned on me one day that this is what it was. And I think it kind of happened in our marriage with my wife and I think she was wanting to make resolutions and kind of do like hey, let's write our resolutions down, that kind of an idea. And as I thought about it, I was like, this is actually really kind of dumb or idiotic. And so, again, if you are, but one thing that I'll say, like a little caveat to this, if you're making a resolution about like working out or doing some of those things a little bit better, yada, 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 and you need to do it that way to make it happen, then by all means, go ahead and do so. But I think in terms of the way that it's kind of structured or done, I don't think it's as helpful as I think it's supposed to be. So.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting how we talked about New Year's resolution, but this is such an important thing for just our walks with Jesus, because so much of it is like, oh yeah, like, you can deal with, sexual sin, you can deal with your own pride, your own sinfulness, your inability to forgive certain people, and et cetera, et cetera. And the reason it's so important for us to ask why is at the root of it is we really don't like how sin makes us look. Therefore, we try to take it onto our terms to clean ourselves.
It's like establishing our own self-righteousness in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or it is,
Yeah, so I think in for those for those many reasons, I think it's just not as helpful as I think as we would like it to be. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
yeah,
That's your
so
I got destroyed.
if you heard this and are interested
You're still listening. Wow.
and you're still listening or whatever, and you think I'm totally incorrect on a lot of these things, would love to hear from you. Would love to have a conversation. So
Fight.
it's not fighting, Chris. It's not about fighting.
You're right.
Make a New Year resolution that you're gonna fight less.
I will fight less. I will lose less.
So yeah, so hopefully that's kind of helpful for those who are
you.
thinking about New Year's resolutions or
That's a good
whatever.
thing to think about.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys.
Wow, you made it till the end.
Yeah. They just like, we should have like a code word. Like if you've listened to this far, like comment like something.
No, it's like-
a
You
code
gotta,
word.
you gotta put the code somewhere in the middle
It's like
because people
audible.
will just
Really?
fast forward all the way to the
And
end.
it should be like comment Avengers or something like
And then
Yeah, maybe I'll buy you a coffee if you.
what?
oh
Wait.
no, that's good. If you want to hang out with Pastor Pete and you're listening to this point,
Yeah.
this
Go
is
to
part of
him
the
and
video.
say like some
Yeah,
word.
be like, hey, you want coffee or something? And it's like, boom, they know. They've already listened to this
Yeah,
point.
it's like-
This is really good.
great onions.
No.
And then you go to Pete. Say great onions. I'll buy you coffee, man.
Maybe the first person who tells me.
Tells you what?
Dude, can you
Some fact in the podcast that they kind of have to really listen to all the way. And they have to listen to the very end.
like what
right?
are you gonna like? What is John's middle name that we mentioned in the podcast?
Well, that's kind of dumb because John is actually my middle name.
No, like the nickname that he has
Oh.
that you'll get to figure out. You know.
Okay,
Now
that's
we're
different.
really digressing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is
hey,
something that our executive producer probably
yeah,
has to cut out.
If
Wow.
you actually listen to this portion of it and you know John's real name, not his middle name, but his real name, and you come and let me know, then I will buy you a coffee or a boba.
Wait.
Dang, I'm gonna do that tomorrow.
Unfortunately, there's something called Facebook. All right.
So
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Thanks for
at-
listening.
Like they will know to do it. You know?
Okay.
So yeah.
Alrighty, guys. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.